the short film boom has happened in India in last 2 or 3 years. Unfortunately, a lot of filmmakers, that's how even I started, use short films as stepping stone to making their feature films. But that's not how it works in the European markets and in US. There is a lot of respect attached to short films. So that's why more people are making short films. There are bigger directors who make short films. So I think we need to reach that stage where, say, a Vishal Bhardwaj does a short film.
Shazia Iqbal was one of the lead production designers of Emmy-nominated and India's first original Netflix series, Sacred Games, and Emmy-nominated miniseries, Lust Stories. Her powerful short movie, Bebaak, that discusses religious and patriarchal preoccupation over women's bodies, won numerous awards, both in India and at the international level. It was produced by Anurag Kashyap and featured actors Sarah Hashmi and Nawazuddin Siddiqui. So what was it like going from a well-known production designer to a first-time filmmaker? Let's find out from Shazia. Hi, Shazia. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure.
For those of you listening, we were supposed to do this interview back in October, but it couldn't be done because Shazia unfortunately came down with COVID. Good thing now she's all okay. But how was that period like?
It was quite weird actually because my throat is very susceptible to infection. So initially I thought it was a regular throat infection, and I had cough and fever, but it didn't feel anything different. I was losing my taste, but initially, so I thought it was a regular, weather change or something like that. So my detection, like the test happened pretty late. I did it on the 8th day.
Oh.
So it got detected on the 9th day at the time when everyone's, situation starts improving.
Yeah.
So I had all the symptoms very much, like they were very much active even after, a week and a half. So that's why my doctor sort of panicked. He thought the virus had gone to the lungs, and that's why all the symptoms are still active. But thankfully, that did not happen because I had this oximeter that I was checking my oxygen levels every day. So that was, it showed 98, 99. It's troublesome if it's below 96.
Yeah.
So that was, luckily I did that. So I didn't need to go for a CT scan. And, but my symptom, I had long COVID, which is something which is apparently a little more common in India than other places. So it stayed like for 7 weeks, even though I tested negative after 3 weeks, but the brain fogging and the weakness, the cough would come back. So I actually had 3 doses of medicine. Like there were 2 relapses.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, for a week I was okay, and then again I started coughing and cold and everything. So again there was a week of medicine, and then again I thought I was okay, but it relapsed again. So it was in 3 different phases. So yeah, it was not good, and especially the body pain, and like you can't sleep in the night, and with that the body pain becomes extremely difficult to manage because it sort of breaks your entire system.
Yeah.
And you try to hold on to it that no, it's not that serious, at least, thankfully you're not in the hospital and all that, but it really breaks you mentally, physically. Somehow I think the virus attacks you in the head and sort of leads to I think after I started feeling like that, I read there's something called post-COVID depression.
Oh.
And a lot of people in Italy started because Italy had a earlier attack rate. So
Yeah.
people are already recovering for last 5-6 months. But then there was a study done, and they found that there's something called post-COVID depression. And because there are people who've gone to the hospital, the trauma and the fact that you can just wake up one morning and not be there.
Yeah.
Even if it's mild or whether you're in the hospital, I think for people who've landed up in the hospital, it's more traumatic. But it's happening at the moment. See, none of us have gone through a pandemic, right? We don't know what it is. We don't know how to deal with it. We don't know the anxieties of, and we are individually dealing with it somehow, like staying connected probably on social media, but individually dealing with our own problems.
Yeah.
So it's funny how there were days when I didn't feel like getting up in the morning. Like there was somewhere, there was the will to, be alive was somehow going down. And then I realized that, oh, there is something called post-COVID depression, but it's getting better every day.
I can imagine it must have been a very frustrating period for you.
Yeah. And also my isolation period was not 14 days like everyone else. It was 29 days for me. So, and I stay in a room. My room is like 8 by 8. It's quite small. So it really got to me in the isolation period. Yeah, and I didn't even feel like talking to anyone. So it just becomes very closeted, like very not lonely, but I'm an introvert. It doesn't matter. The loneliness was not an issue, but it was being isolated. Like I don't know what it would feel like, but eventually it started getting to me after a point. And also my parents, they're older, they have pre-illnesses, and that stress of, like I have to contain the virus to me and make sure it doesn't get to them. And they don't know much. My parents are not in the internet or social media, so they have very little awareness of what the disease is like. So I would talk to my mom on video call at least twice a day, and I had to calm them down. When I tested positive, actually for a day and a half till my parents tested negative, is like one of the toughest times to deal with, because I thought if they test positive, it's like, anything can happen then. Yeah.
Thank God, at least for that, because for older people, it's definitely harder. Yeah. But it's great that you're back on your feet and you're doing all right now.
Yeah, much better.
And I know you quickly jumped into all the work that you had to catch up with, right? Because you've been busy with deadlines and stuff.
No, I used isolation time to write, and it was very hard to do that. But I used to write few hours in the day, so that was a savior bit actually.
That's good. So you're not completely new to the movie industry, right? Your father used to be part of it.
Yeah, he was. He used to work here in the 70s. He used to work with Raman and Sagar, and I have been on a few sets when I was growing up.
But it never occurred to you because after that you went on to study architecture.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it never occurred to you that, movies could be an option.
Not really. I actually wanted to become a aeronautical engineer when I was growing up, because it was a very standard thing in conservative families. Like my family is not conservative, but extended families, that if it's a girl, then it has to be a doctor or a teacher, not even an engineer. Engineer for was for the boys. It's more masculine job. So I wanted to become an astronaut or aeronautics designer or something. But there was just one college in, I think, Chennai that time. The time I graduated. No, the time I passed my 12th. So I just accidentally landed up in architecture. My brother was studying civil engineering, and he told me that, you know what, I did a mistake. I should have gone in architecture. Like, people respect architects more. So he told me to go into architecture. I had no idea what it was. Um, and I just landed up in architecture. But I'm glad, because I was there in arts. So it sort of helped making that transition to films.
Yeah. And it was actually when a very well known production designer, Sharmar Roy, came to your college. And that's when that seed was planted in your head.
Yes. You've done your research. Where did you get to know all this? Sorry, can I ask you which interview did you see?
So I saw the videos of yours that are posted online.
Okay, okay. No, I was just, because I wasn't expecting you to know all this. So
But thank you.
yeah, I'm very impressed you did your research, because this is the first time someone already knows everything and is asking me. So yeah, that's very impressive. So I was in my fourth year architecture. I was a seminar secretary. Like we have this festival called Archfest in our architecture school, and I was responsible. And we had a theme that year about different fields related to architecture, different design fields related to architecture, and that is when I contacted Sharmar Roy, and I wanted her to come and present something like for a seminar. And she came to college and she was very nice and she had a good presentation. I was so very impressive. So it felt like, oh, this seems something exciting, and of course I had a connection to my childhood. So it wasn't something completely bizarre, the entire thing about film industry. So I wanted to work with her actually, but she got married and she moved to New York for a few years. And that was the time I graduated and I wanted to work. So I contacted a senior of mine was working with Sabu Cyril, this another production designer, who was like one of the biggest production designer in the country around that time.
Yeah, he's a huge name.
Yeah, he's a big name in South as well as here. Actually,
Yeah.
he's done like all those big production, and science fiction films and all of that. So I think he had done Mehuna at the time that I had met him in 2005. And
Okay.
right after that, I met him on an ad. He was doing a lays ad with Saif Ali Khan. So I went to the set. I had my architecture portfolio, and he saw that and he said, okay, all this doesn't matter, you can join from tomorrow. So yeah, it was that was a time he also, some of his assistant had gone on a holiday, on a break. So he just had one main contractor and there was no other assistant. So I got to do a lot of hands-on work because of that. So that was like quick learning, yeah, because of all the sudden responsibility.
Could I know which projects you worked on?
There's a film called Janeman, Shirish Kundar's film.
Yeah.
That was my first film as an assistant art director. So it was a big production to work on because it was an Aditwala production with Salman Khan and Preeti Zinta, Akshay Kumar. So for me, like a person who had never done anything, it was a huge production because each set would go on for construction would go on for like 20-25 days. Now I'm more used to working on indie films and independent small cinemas. But when I started as an assistant art director, I suddenly came to this big world where every set. I mean, they would be very expensive sets. I can't tell the budget and all, but construction and all would take anywhere between 17-20 days, which is a lot of time. So I was like part of constructing some of the big houses and palaces and stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember the movie. I haven't seen the whole movie.
And most of like 90% of the location in the film were sets actually. So most of it is constructed and designed. Yeah, it's not on location.
That's a thing about being a production designer, right? I mean, for a general audience, they pay attention to the plot or to the character, and it's from the spaces at the most they pick up cues.
Right.
Obviously, there's so much of details that go into actually setting it up.
Yeah, absolutely. And see, different cinema has different kind of intention. Like a film that is more, it's set in realism, you don't want to see the set. Like if I'm making a film, I do not want the audience to look at the set, but I want the audience to look at my story, the characters. So basically, a good production design is when you ignore what's in the background because it's so real.
Yeah.
The moment you start looking at the set, that is a problem. But in mainstream cinema, it adds to the grandeur. So it doesn't matter because there's certain amount of shattering of that make believe that people enjoy, like, oh, look at the costume that the girl was wearing. Look at the set. It was so grand. So that's the difference between the kind of cinema and the kind of audience, how they perceive it. Like when my mom watches, like she started watching my work and all, it was different for her because for her, like, good art direction is something which is grand. So then I used to tell her that, good art direction is when you don't see the art direction. It gets lost in the background. You have to focus on the story.
Yeah.
And of course, there are certain things, elements that stand out and you remember them. But largely, yeah, that's a different kind of cinema, what works better. So in the mainstream cinema, something like, say, a flashy red wall can be great. And in a cinema with more realism, it can be very distracting. And it won't be there in a cinema with realism, unless there is a very strong purpose of that.
So, which do you enjoy more?
Watching, I enjoy realism definitely now because I've also grown up with what I started with. I was doing like, bigger films as an assistant, of course, because I was working with Sabu Cyril. I've worked on some big productions, but even when I started as an art director, I was doing like mainstream stuff. But now I started working with Anurag for last 4 years, and he generally does films which are set in more realistic. Like his films are also very commercial in a different way. So he has a lot of song and dances and all of that, like Dev D or Gangs of Wasseypur.
Yeah.
They have, they're not like indie. They're made in a very independent cinema style, but they have a certain bit of masala in them that they do. They come in the category of commercial cinema, but his visuals are very realistic.
I agree.
Have you heard of this film called Coffee and Cigarettes?
I think I vaguely come across some title like that. Who's it by?
So, Coffee and Cigarettes is basically a film by Jim Jarmusch. It was released in 2004. It's an Italian film. It's basically a black and white film with about, I think, 8 or 9 stories set in a coffee shop. And set in a coffee shop, I think there are some house cuts also where two people are having conversation across a coffee table.
Okay.
So that's a very designed film. It's most of the frames have these black and white theme to the film because that's what the film is about. So that is replicated in the production design of the film. So like there is one sequence where the table surface is checkered, black and white checks. There is another sequence where I think the cup is black and white. So there's always, it's there in black and white because that's a theme of the film.
Okay.
So it's a very designed film that way, but it's very realistic at the same time. It's an independent cinema. It is, Jim Jarmusch is of course not like a big commercial director. So it's a very interesting film. You should watch it.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
So even when you have to make a set realistic, it's always by design. It's not by fluke. Like if I have to make a realistic set, like say most of Sacred Games also is a little poppy, but a lot of set is in the background of what's happening and it's in realistic space. That is by design. It's because I said that Coffee and Cigarette is a very designed film. All films are designed films, but in Coffee and Cigarette, it comes out. You start noticing after the first sequence and then the second sequence, you start noticing the black and white checks everywhere. And then it hits you, oh, that's the theme of the film.
Okay.
So that's little different than, say, Sacred Games, where there is no theme coming out from the art. It's all just realistic backgrounds.
I mean, of course, I love Sacred Games. It was such a huge hit as well. And you were the lead production designer on it. Was the task really daunting for you?
So Sacred Games have been shot by 2 directors. Like the first season was Anurag and Vikram Motwane, and second was Anurag and Neeraj Khewan. So there have been 2 lead designers. I just wanted to clarify. There are 2 lead designers for both the seasons.
Okay.
So of course I did Anurag's section in both seasons. And it's been the most difficult project of my life. It's also been the most grand project. I wasn't supposed to do Sacred Games. I was shooting for my film Bebaak at the time. This was September 2017.
Okay.
And I think Anurag also came in the project little late. Like I think he got the project 2.5 months before it was greenlit. I mean, before it was supposed to go and shoot. So I told him that I'm shooting my own film. So of course I can't work on another project. So I refused initially. But then it so happened that eventually I ended up, after 4 or 5 days of the shoot started, Anurag told me that he prefers me on the set because he was also working with me on, like, we had worked on 2 films and 1 short film, I think, before that. So he wanted me to come on board, and it was sort of a last minute thing. And that was the time Mukkabaz, my first film with him, it had got selected for TIFF. TIFF is Toronto International Film Festival.
Okay.
And in the first week of September, I had just completed shooting Bebaak. Like I was going to go for TIFF with him. It was me, him, and a couple of actors. On the flight to Toronto, I got the script of Sacred Games, and I had not done a web series earlier, right? And I've never done TV as well. So when I saw the script, I was like, this is intense. And it is something because our portion, Nawaz's portion, was set in the period time, right?
Yeah.
So for period look, you have to work like 3 times more because there's a lot of research that goes into because I don't know what houses in 70s look like. So I have to study how houses look like at that time, or a bar or restaurant or a club or offices. I don't know what, like, you start from the place of not knowing when you're doing a different time period. So I was like, okay, I'm going to Toronto. I'm coming back in a week's time, and we're already shooting. The day I was landing back in Mumbai, we were supposed to construct a set. And even team, I had to get at the last minute. I had an art director who's, my subordinate,
Okay.
and there was one assistant. So I was like, this looks like a mega project where you need at least a team of 7 8 people. I have 2 people with me, so I don't know how I'm going to do that. So anyway, I read the script and I was doing my breakdowns while going, like, flight up and then flight down. And then after I came back, it was for a month for that schedule. There was no sleep. It was me and my art director Madhura. We used to like, one of us used to do the research for that particular set. The other person used to go and mark props, and the third person, assistant, like my assistant, would be there on the set on shoot. But it was constant rotation of work without any sleep, and that 1 month was insane because I jumped at the last minute. But season 2 was far more tough because we shot in 2 other countries. We shot in South Africa and Kenya. So outdoor becomes more hectic because a lot of team members you have to take from the local city.
Yeah.
And Kenya is slightly a difficult country to shoot because they don't have a shooting setup like us. So, girl who was my art director, they're not that experienced. They don't get international shoot. It's like a big deal. They have very small ad industry. They don't even make big scale films. They don't have proper studios. So Kenya was very challenging that way to source anything. Like, probably 2 furniture shops which is actually just a rental shop for furniture, but it's not for shoot specific. So you had to really do a lot of jugaad to get stuff. Yeah, anything that you need, you end up buying there. But it's a beautiful country. Yeah. And South Africa was amazing. South Africa, of course, is like they have a proper shooting setup, and but it becomes very hectic because we were shooting for 3 months and there was no break in between, and we were shifting between India, Kenya, South Africa. So season 2 ended up becoming the most challenging project.
Yeah, I can imagine. But what's interesting is I didn't know that you were shooting for Bebaak as well, along with Sacred Games. But when did you start conceiving the idea of writing down Bebaak?
That was 2017 June. We had just completed shooting Mukkabaz. And so Anurag is a very chilled out person to shoot. I was planning to shoot a film for like 2 years, 3 years, but I was somehow dodging the idea. I don't know, maybe I wasn't confident or something like that. But when I saw Anurag on shoot, I was like, he's just like laughing and chilling because there are a lot of directors who make it seem like a life and death matter on set. But Anurag is completely the opposite, and he makes it look so easy. And I was like, if this guy can direct a film, I think I can direct a film. So somehow I think his chilled out attitude was inspiring like that. Yeah. So I came back from Mukaba shoot, and I think it took me like 4 days to write the first draft of the film. And I started sending it to people, and I was surprised by the kind of reaction people were giving. They're like, oh, this is really good and it should be made. And I was like, okay. So it was basically on one of the shoot days at Mukkabaz. There are costume base, right? During a shoot where
Yeah.
you keep costume of all the actors. It's called costume base. So where there'll be like, clothes hanging, and there'll be like these big steel boxes with other clothes, accessories, everything. So I was chilling with my art director and the costume designer and few ADs, assistant directors on the costume base. And the costume designer's name was Prashant. And I said, Prashant, tu film karega kya? I want to shoot something. And he's like, yeah, let's do it, let's do it. And they all got excited. So I thought, you know what? I think I have a team. I just need to write a script. So everyone, and the assistant director, I asked him, will you be my first AD? And will you, like, I was just talking randomly, and they all seem excited to work together. So then, as soon as Mukabba's finished, and me and my art director, generally we've been working together for almost 10 years now. And what we do is, when we do an outdoor shoot, we always stay back at the place.
Okay.
So it's like we take a little holiday, because when you're shooting, there is not enough time to absorb a place. And we are travelers like that. And I'm a very passionate traveler. Like, I really like to go to as many places as possible. I've been to 23 countries in last 6 years,
Oh, wow.
which, yeah. I mean, some of it is, of course, because of shoot, but a lot of it is because I really find myself, my core in traveling.
That's nice.
So, yeah. So we waited there, and of course, Banaras is like one of the most amazing places in the country, and we were shooting in Banaras at the time. So after shoot, Madhura, my art director's name, Madhura and I waited there, and we discussed, and she really was very excited about the idea. She's actually the first person who told me that this is something that needs to be made, because you have so many ideas as a storyteller, but you don't know what to go with. It becomes very confusing, because you get lost in, like, oh, will this work, is this okay as a short film?
Yeah.
What if, like, where do I go with this story? Is this a film festival film? Is this, like a mainstream film? It's very confusing to decide on the story. So it was nice that Madhura's excitement somehow told me that, oh, there is something in this. And that is when I came back and I wrote the script in 4 days. It started getting very positive response from the industry friends that I was sending to.
Yeah, I watched the movie and I really loved it. It was short and impactful. And when Bebaak, when it starts rolling, right, it says based on true events. Was the experience, did it have anything to do with your own life?
Yeah, it's all of us is not. It's just inspired by a true event. Of course, happened to me. I studied architecture, and in the second year, I had gone for an interview like that. And the film is just a little bit of that chunk, because the interview that I had, the person also spoke a lot about other things related to the religion, like how science and Islam sort of works in the same way. And it's because a lot of religion sort of defies science, and he was trying to convince me that Islam doesn't. So it was just one bit of the conversation that was there. I picked on that idea and then fictionalized everything around it. But yeah, that was the true story bit.
Okay. So, how did Anurag Kashyap manage to come on to the project?
I actually realized, a friend of mine after reading said that this could be a very controversial film and probably a difficult film to make. And actually, a few friends also said that maybe keep the story, it's good, but don't make it as your first film. It is something that can put you in trouble, because we are a very religious society, right?
Yeah.
And it becomes difficult to say something that points out at religion. Even though personally I feel that the film talks and targets misogyny and patriarchy, because I could be, if I was born, say, in a Hindu family, and I could have made a film on that. So I'm just trying to tell my story, and I'm born in this particular, I was raised as a Muslim, but I really feel that misogyny is a problem in most of the religions.
Yeah.
I should just confidently say every religion, because women are treated as secondary. All the burden of tradition and culture comes on women. So, izzat bolte hai na, izzat, honor. We are burdened with honor from the moment we are born, and that is thanks to religion.
That's true.
But a few of my friends were actually worried that, since I'm talking about Muslims, and this was also the time when there was, a lot of mob attacks were happening in India, and the Muslims were in trouble. So it is basically at the time when Muslims are facing a lot of problem in the country. I was trying to tell a story which actually points something with a problem within the community. This issue of hijab. So I think it was a bit of a personal struggle to take that call, that whether it's the right time to tell the story or not. But then I realized that there is never really going to be a right time.
Were you worried about the backlash you might have received? from your community?
Yeah, I did. And I also got the backlash eventually from some people. But that's why I was worried that this might be a little difficult film to make in that sense. And that's why I wanted Anurag to kind of be there on the project because there is some name who can, like, take care. It's not like a bunch of random people making the film. So he read the script and I told him that I sent him the script. I said, if you like it, then see if you want to present the film. I didn't even ask him to produce it, but he really loved the script and he told me that I would love to produce the film and you do budget and we'll figure out how much money and all of that. So he sort of came on board by himself.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So, how did Nawazuddin Siddiqui come on board? Did he readily agree?
Well, Nawaz came in the film at the last minute. So when I was writing the film, I had Nawaz in my mind because somehow I felt that he really fits in the character very well.
Yeah, I love him. He just brings every character to.
He's so natural, right?
Yeah.
So, in fact, a few filmmakers from the industry have said this is a shot. He's just there in like two scenes actually, and this is one of his best work. So I really take that as a big compliment personally, because well, if your actor is done well, it's a compliment for the director as well, right?
Yeah, true.
So I was actually planning for the film, like wrote it in mid-June, and we eventually shot in end of August. So we did 2 months of prep, and I wrote the film with him in mind. But a friend of mine said that, this is a very tricky film to do, and he said that this is your first film, and the moment you get a star involved, his agents will be involved, and it will be very complicated for you, and you have multiple actors in the story, so it's going to be very complicated to figure out how to deal with the dates and all of that. So why don't you take, like, somebody else, basically don't take a star. That was his gist, that if you, the moment you take a star, it's going to be a lot of problem. You don't want that in your first film, and it's a short film, so
Right.
it doesn't matter, like, don't put yourself in all that trouble. So I took his word and I did not ask Nawaz. I didn't even tell Anurag I wanted Nawaz for the role. And we cast somebody else. He was also a fantastic actor. And it just so happened that his dates, that other actor was also part of Sacred Games.
Okay.
And sort of like he had already told us he'll be working with us, but then his dates and all, he said that might be troublesome for him to. And of course, anyone wouldn't, like, they wouldn't want to leave a series like Sacred Games for, like a short film. So, but it was fine. It was not a problem with us. He told us like 3 weeks ago, saying that, it might be a trouble to, like, lose the series. So we let him go. And then it just clicked me, what, maybe it is just, I mean, I don't believe in destiny and fate, so it wasn't that, but maybe it was just pushing me to pursue Nawaz again. That is what the instinct said. And I messaged Anurag that, get me, do one thing for me and get me Nawaz if possible. So Anurag I wrote a long message to him. It was like 3 in the night, and I said, you know what, the film will really change if Nawaz comes on board and this, that. And he just messaged me saying, okay. So I was like, what does okay mean? Like, will you get him, and, will he do a film like this? And he said, yeah, Ajayega, no problem. We are very, good friends, and he'll do it. And I know that the script is so good and he's perfect for it. So then I kept waiting. 2 weeks before the shoot, 10 days before the shoot, and he's still not getting finalized. And I panicked one day. I called Anurag and I said, he's like, yeah, I've already spoken to him. He'll come. I said, but I need to meet him, and I'm a first time director. I know that Nawaz has been there for long, but I'm a first time director. I need to go and meet him and talk to him, tell him about the character. He's like, you will get one meeting with him. You manage whatever you want to with that. I met him a night before the shoot.
Oh.
And that was really very nerve wracking because I thought, like, what do I even, like, what if I tell him now and he sort of, says that, no, this is not my cup of tea or something. But I met him a night before. That was also our first day of shoot because we were shooting the house sequence with the family.
Okay.
That was our first day of shoot. And in the night after shoot, I went and I met Nawaz. And next day we were shooting the interview sequence in Bhindi Bazaar. So I gave him the script. The main interview sequence was like a 8-page long scene, which is very long basically for any actor to,
Yeah.
read or rehearse or by heart or all of that. So I told him, please read the scene a few times and come on the set. He doesn't have the aura that you get nervous in front of him. He's a very secure actor, secure person. So he makes you feel comfortable around him. So I spoke to him about the character. I roughly gave him a gist of what the film was about. And I also had like slight trouble because I didn't know him personally, right? I worked with him on Sacred Games after I worked with him on Bebaak.
Okay.
So I met him as a director first and then as a designer later. So when I met him first, like in that meeting, I didn't know that what his personal opinion on hijab and the issue of why women are asked to cover and all that. I didn't know his personal opinion, so that sort of was telling me what if he doesn't do the film. Um, but he was quite chilled out, and I read the scene to him and he said it sounds really good. And next morning he was supposed to come at 10 a.m. to the location. That was, I think, 30th August 2017. It was flooding in Bombay that day somehow.
Oh.
It happens like once in 3 years, and it happened to be that day. And he could reach the set only at 3 in the afternoon. So I had lost a majority of my shooting time because of floods. And well, thank God he still like ended up coming to the set, because I really thought that we won't get Nawaz that day. And I knew that if we are not shooting with him that day, it will be very difficult to get him another day, because next week he was starting shoot for Sacred Games.
Okay.
So, but he came on the set somehow with a lot of stress. He managed to shoot the most important scene in the film, and yeah, it was. It somehow turned out good.
Were you nervous directing him?
I wasn't actually, because maybe it is to do with the fact that I have already, like at that time, 2017, I was working in the industry for almost 12 years. So, like doing your first film with Salman and then Akshay Kumar and then doing a project with Shah Rukh Khan. So, you get used to the idea of stars, because honestly, you just see them as your colleagues then.
Right.
Even though as a design team or an art team, I don't have much to interact with actors, but they are there on set. They, like, you see them as people, rather than stars or celebrities. You see them as humans just like you. So that whole bubble, I didn't have a big bubble of like, oh, these are stars, these are demigods. I have, of course, not never haven't been raised to treat actors like that. But it didn't feel like, because he's a star, for me he was my character. So it was, I was very clear that this is what is needed of him. I was nervous about the fact that it was raining and there was electrical problems and all of that, so I had all that other stress to handle. Nawaz being a star was not a problem. And like I said, it also comes from the person, right? He himself is not that person. There are few stars I have worked with who need that kind of attention, that, treat me like a demigod. But Nawaz is not that kind of a person. So the moment he was on set, I was just like focused on. In fact, there was a moment where there was this particular dialogue in his long monologue, and he was paraphrasing it.
Okay.
And at least that word which I wanted, he wasn't saying that, and he kept paraphrasing the sentence. And I was very sure that I'm not going to okay the shot till he says what I wanted him to say. So I told him once, twice, thrice. On the fifth take, also, it didn't happen. I was like, damn, I'm losing the time and this is just going on. So I went to him and I said, okay, Nawaz bhai, listen. This word, you want to paraphrase the whole thing, I'm okay. This word has to come because it's very important in implying the misogynist in you. So he's like, अच्छा पहले बोल देना चाहिए था. So he understood that, and he was very, like, an actor and director, there has to be a lot of give and take in this relationship. So even though I didn't have, I would never want to work like that again, that I meet an actor a evening before the shoot. because you need to have a very strong, almost marital kind of bond with your actor, because you can have a great script, if the person doesn't deliver, the film fails.
Okay.
So, and the reason why I think a lot of film in India ends up being unemotional, or without any feelings, because the actors don't get there. It's also a writing issue, I'm not blaming just the actors for it. But yeah, I really enjoyed. I mean, I worked with him for like 9 hours, but it was really fun. And of course, then later on, we worked together in Sacred Games, and he was like, "Oh, this is my director who's a designer here." And after the shoot, he was very kind. He sent a message. He sent a message to Anurag saying that your director is really good, and I see that she will end up going far. I mean, I don't know about that, but it was very kind of him to send a message to Anurag saying good things about me.
Yeah, that's nice. So, did you find that the directing it came easily to you?
It somehow came very naturally to me. It came so naturally to me that I stopped enjoying art directing because of that. And that's not a sad bit. It just happened. It didn't feel like I was doing it for the first time, and maybe that experience of working as a production designer, because I am used to working with 100 people on the set, and directing people into, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to, and there are a lot of decision taking. Like as a director, a lot of what you're doing is just deciding on answering questions and deciding on what to do, right? Whether this angle works better or that angle works better, whether this costume works better or whether that costume works better.
Okay.
So you're taking a lot of decision, and as a production designer also somehow you're doing that. But production design is just one department. But directing, of course, you're telling a story, you have to know your emotions really well. And somewhere writing the script, I haven't directed anything which someone else has written, but directing something that I've written, that I know what I want the actors to feel at the moment, and I know what I want the audience to feel at the same moment. I think that sort of helped. I don't know if it will be different if I direct something which is written by another writer, say. But this just felt very natural. At no point was I felt like, this is like, driving me crazy. Of course, the entire process drives you crazy, because I'm used to handling one department. Now I'm supposed to handle entire department.
Yeah.
And I was also producing the film at the same time, right? Producing as in executing the project. Because it's a short film, and I did have a line producer on the film, but largely all the monetary decision ends up being on your head because it's a short film. Maybe on a bigger project, directors, actually at whatever scale, directors do get involved in the budget, because whether if you're doing a 5 crore film or if you're doing a 100 crore film, the director at some point gets involved in, oh, this is going to cost so much. Do you want this, or can you work with this? Those kind of conversations are common between directors and producers.
Okay.
But here I was executing the project also along with my subordinate and my line producer. So it sort of took a lot of me. It also becomes extremely like there's multitasking at some other level.
Yeah.
um, but I think coming from production design background, knowing the budgeting and all of that really well, it sort of helped.
And of course, it went on to win a slew of awards.
Yeah.
But once the movie was done, did you like had trouble, pushing it into the right markets to, to get it to be seen?
Yes, I did actually, because generally, like in feature films, there is always a team who does that. I was trying to do this with my art director Madhura. She was my production designer on Bebaak.
Okay.
So between her and me, we've done everything. We've done the casting, we've done auditions, we've done actor workshops, locations, everything. And when the film was ready, initially Anurag could send it to like a couple of festivals, but largely he's also a director. He has a lot of work in his hand, so I cannot depend on him. Okay, now I have done the film and this is your baby and you take care of it. It wasn't. In short films, the director has to do everything. So I started contacting festivals, and it became actually a far more stressful job than directing, because directing is storytelling. It is something that I wanted to do.
Right.
But sending films to festival, writing emails to programmers, it went on for almost a year. And I got the result of it. We ended up going to a lot of festivals and winning awards.
Yeah.
But that is something I didn't enjoy. I wouldn't want to do it again. When I make my feature film, I'll definitely have an agent for it. I do hope there are, agents for documentaries and short films that come up in India and help filmmakers, because this is not what a filmmaker should be doing. Though it's a great learning process as well, because I know now which festival picks up what kind of a film. I have that sort of an idea. I have a idea of how festivals work, which is a big part of learning.
Yeah.
And that is very helpful, of course, as a filmmaker. But it took too much of my time. I wouldn't want to do that again.
Maybe there should be an agency for that to market the movies.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is how the short film boom has happened in India in last 2 or 3 years. There is a lot of basically substandard stuff also coming in the market, but there are a lot of good short films coming in the market. And unfortunately, a lot of filmmakers, that's how even I started, use short films as stepping stone to making their feature films. Uh, but that's not how it works in the European markets and in US. They see short film as a shorter film format.
Okay.
There is a lot of respect attached to short films. I feel that it's harder to tell a short film because when you have 90 minutes or 75 minutes, it's easier to get that to a point where the audience will really root for your protagonist, whatever they want. You'll feel for them. But the shorter the time limit is, all of that you have to do it in a shorter span.
Yeah.
So I feel short films are like, there are at least two short films that I was trying to write. It ended up being a feature film, because you always feel like, acha, I have to do more to get the emotions right. So I feel short films that way are far more complicated. Like, I've seen some of the short films in Cannes and Sundance, which is just two scenes, and they somehow are brilliant. They make you feel, they move you emotionally. And I think we are still not there making those kind of films, but that is because the industry also supports the format.
Okay.
So that's why more people are making short films. There are bigger directors who make short film. There are not It's not just something that the first time filmmakers are doing it. So I think we need to reach that stage where, say, a Vishal Bhardwaj does a short film,
Yeah.
because that story needs to be told in that many minutes. We have to reach that level, or Debakar Banerjee does it. So now, when Debakar and Anurag and all these people did a short format film, it was an anthology for Netflix, whether that's Love Story or Ghost Stories. But I'm saying about these directors making their own independent short film, so that people will be excited that, oh, a Zoya Akhtar or Debakar Banerjee is doing a short film. I want to see that, what story they're saying in this small format. And it's
Yeah.
not put together as an anthology. It's fine to sell it as an OTT, because Netflix and Amazon they don't do short films right now. I don't know why they don't do that. I was in LA for a screenwriters lab last year, and we were on a field trip to Netflix. And I asked the one of the creative heads in Netflix. I asked him that what is the reason for not taking up short films currently, because there's so much content on Netflix, and I'm sure there is space for it. But he said that that is probably the reason that they don't do it, that they haven't taken that creative decision of including short films, because there'll be so much of it, because short films are made more than feature films. So that's entire selection process and all of that. I'm sure the process of selecting a film is very long and lengthy for Netflix.
Yeah.
So probably that's too much of work for a short film. But I feel it's a great market. I really feel that it's great for filmmakers to be able to, know that there is, because for feature films, there is the whole thing about business of filmmaking, right? There is money at stake.
Right.
Short films require lesser money, lesser time. And there are some brilliant short films getting made around the world. So I feel that the entire industry needs that support, especially in India.
I agree. Like you said, you have more to say in a shorter period of time in a short film.
Yeah.
And in fact, the perfect analogy I can think of is I love short stories. And I don't know if you've heard of this author called Alice Munro.
Okay.
And she writes beautiful short stories. In fact, each short story is like a novel within itself.
Really?
So yeah, it's lovely. That's what I immediately thought of when you said, how some short films can capture an entire range of, the story or emotions. Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you think in India is a market conducive for independent filmmakers?
Yeah, I think now more than ever because of the whole OTT boom, right?
Yeah.
Because there is Netflix and Amazon, they are, I guess, much ahead of in the race. But there's also Sony Live, and there is Z5, and there are other channels. There's so many channels that um, somebody told me there is this actor who's done this series, and they told me of a channel that I had not even heard. So there's a good and bad thing. There are pros and cons of that because now there's so much getting shot, so many people, but everyone has work. And I mean, why not? Maybe we just have to see in what direction it goes, because it can collectively regress as well. That
Yeah.
it goes to the Indian television level, that since the late 90s, and then all these K serials started coming, the typical, what we call the soap operas, the Sasbo soap operas.
Yeah.
They took away the quality from Indian television. There were some really good serials in the early 90s, and this sort of regressed to a point where it was just about, these grand sets with heavy jewelry and family dramas. But family dramas can also be very intense and good, but this was just adding to, and somewhere it does affect the society. I feel like, if there is a show that the entire family sits and watches, and all it's showing is a lot of regression or misogyny, and showing women as somebody to be kept at home, so it sort of regresses the entire society.
Yeah.
I think we've moved away from that, and I think because of the quality of shows on OTT, we also are exposed to more content from worldwide, right? So
Yeah.
that will also help the Indian television to better their content, saying there are different kind of stories. You don't have to, because it becomes a demand supply game, that if Kyuki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi works really well and it went on for years, then everyone else is making similar show like that. But now if a Sacred Game comes in, or a Patal Lok comes and does really well, I'm trying to think what all is doing well to give an example of. But the people are exposed to, like, the Queen's Gambit released on Netflix, and it became this huge series. Then
Yeah.
somebody, like an like a director on Indian television, he might see this and say, "Oh, you know what? A young girl becoming a chess player is a very powerful story." So we are exposed to more content from around the world. That helps, I think. Uh, Especially in developing our entire television. I mean, we really need to get over what happened in the last 10, 15 years, and get some good stories back.
I know, yeah. Which was sad because in the 80s, a family drama like Dekh Bhai Dekh was actually very nice and entertaining.
Exactly. It was so much fun, right? There was a bunch of those actually. Dekh Bhai Dekh was, of course, funny and really good. Then there was Bomkesh Bakshi, which was great. It was a suspense thing, which was, I mean, I still find that my most favorite thing on television. And there was Bunyad, and there are a lot of shows I don't remember now, but there were a lot of good series on like Indian television.
Yeah.
I don't know how it totally went into this Sasbo zone, and
Suddenly regressed, yeah.
yeah, regressed, and how it still feels like it's going to take time to come out of that.
Yeah.
And I have started watching a lot of Korean stuff on Netflix, or I have this other Asian channel that I watch. Their dramas are quite intense. So even if it's a family drama, it doesn't need to be. I mean, of course, they are also similar to Indian family taboos, and all are quite similar in Korean society. So they have their own regression to deal with, but just as pure storytelling, like how do you create drama, how do you create it comes out of conflict, how do you create conflict. So even in that, I feel they have done so well, and that's why all these so-called, like, they call K dramas, they're so popular around the world, because they're doing some great family stuff. And I don't know why we have are serials, I mean, I haven't seen for a long time now, but I really don't think they are popular at all now. It doesn't connect. You can't, like, no one can relate to these stories.
Yeah, I hope eventually they fade out.
Yeah, exactly.
uh, about 2 years back, Bebaak got unfortunately with the Mumbai Film Festival. It was in the last minute with the Me Too was seen as a collateral damage and it was pulled down.
Hmm.
Obviously, it must have been upsetted you a lot.
Yeah, it was difficult to take it because, well, I didn't think we were important enough to get banned like that. And it didn't feel like the reason was fair to the film and to the people who had put their time in, and to my actors, to the crew. It just felt very unfair, the whole thing.
Yeah, I know. And yeah, I even read the letter you had sent out to the festival organizers about it.
Yeah, I had no idea that letter was going to go places. I remember I was in US last year and I was at a gathering of some Indian and Pakistani people, and after like an hour, hour and a half, we were all eating dinner, and then a person with whom I had gone to the gathering, he said something about that incident, and there's another girl who's like, "Oh, you're that Shazia." I was like, "How has someone in New York read that letter?" It just it just traveled everywhere. So I didn't expect it. I thought, like, 100 people will reach it, but the reach of that letter was far more. So it felt like the right thing to do that time. Maybe I don't know if well, it's all in the past now, so there's no point in saying talking a lot about it. But it felt like I wanted to get that out in the letter, that it's
Okay.
sort of because I don't know if it was directly related to the festival, but we also ended up getting like, out from a couple of other festivals after that. I have no idea whether it was related, but it could be anything. So it felt like we just ended up becoming collateral damage to something we had no connection to. And a lot of people said that, well, there are a chunk of people who were very supportive, and strangers from the internet and people from the industry. There are quite a bit of people from the industry who were very supportive in the way that they would send message, and I got emails and uh, DMs that saying that we stand with you. They couldn't take a stand openly because I also understand that, Mumbai Film Festival is the only good festival in the city. I mean, there is MIF, it happens once in 2 years, but this is more of the, the kind of place everyone wants to go. They want their film to be released here, and the Mumbai Film Festival does a good job of attracting filmmakers to the festival. So it's a good platform to showcase your film and make some name for yourself and for your crew, for your film.
Okay.
So I understand why people didn't want to support me openly that time, which is, I wasn't looking for support anyway, because yeah, well, validation works only for some time like that. So it was okay. Like, now I look back at it, it seems like a very weird time in life, but it's fine. A lot of people eventually ended up watching Bebaak later because of the controversy.
Okay. So something good came out of it, I suppose.
Yeah, it's said in the show business there's no bad publicity. It ended up being that. But I wouldn't want to live those moments again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay without that. But whatever, that's life, right? It just happens. Things happen to you and you have to learn how to deal with it.
Yeah. There are so many wonderful women directors now. But as a woman director behind the scenes, is it still easy for you all?
First of all, I have a issue with saying women directors, because it automatically puts me in a different category than a male director.
I agree. I usually don't like to, do that as well. But with the industry still opening up, and I want to find out about the biasness.
I know. You're asking me a question. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So, like, I have a couple of friends. Sorry, I'm digressing from that. I have a couple of friends who are, of course, from my architecture days, and one of my female friends, she tells me that it's always the male is called an architect and the female is called female architect. Same thing with doctors, right? It's a doctor and female doctor.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's there everywhere. Well, The bias, I think it's a conditioning that direction is a masculine job. And it is something that women are now entering into it. So a lot of progressive men are okay, and they're conscious with that change. But for a lot of people, it is still something that men do. A producer will think 10 times before he puts a certain good amount of money in a film directed by a woman than by a man. I think that is where, because I keep hearing that this is the best time to be a woman director, but it's not. I don't see it getting translated. Like in US, I think there's a union rule now that every production house, I think it's something like that, about 40% of them have to be directed. 40% of the film has to be directed by women.
Okay.
Because unfortunately, that's the whole thing about the quota system, right? That's a quota system versus the meritocracy. Like, how do you decide when we are living in a discriminated society? How do you decide whether it's being fair to women or not? Like, for myself, I can only talk for myself. I don't know, overall there is no survey to say, oh, now it's like, the really best time to be a woman, because
Yeah.
they give you a film because you're a woman, because your tribe needs that support. And there is no way to see that unless we obviously see that there are bigger films being helped by women. And in fact, last 4 days ago, I met a female producer, and she told me that she feels the need to support female directors because someone has to do it. That's why she's taken on herself that she wants to work with more female directors, because it's not that who's more talented or whose job it is. It is till you don't decide that, it's not going to happen. Like in the whole quota system, that where would the lower caste people be in the country if there wasn't a set quota for them? And that's sorry, I'm going a little political because it's just an analogy that I want to make.
No, I understand. You're saying it's like giving a level playing field at first. Once they have that is when you can start competing, right?
Correct. So that's why the difference between, I feel, in the empowerment of Muslims and empowerment of Dalits in the country, that's a difference that the government, there was never a fixed percentage of job for Muslims in the country. That wasn't decided in the constitution. And that's why everyone says constitution is very fair, and you know how we are fighting when we try to defend the constitution. I have that one bit of a problem with that a lot of the Muslim community hasn't progressed as much because there is no government job for us.
Okay.
And the Dalit community that way, I mean, I feel that it's a big problem how, caste is, I think, a bigger problem in the country than religion. But somewhere the Dalit community has managed to raise themselves and, fight back all the discrimination against them, because they get jobs, because it's there in the quota. For that, Muslims don't have that. And somewhere, if a community, if a gender, if someone is getting oppressed, and if you don't give them a fair share with a quota, it's not going to happen. And I think
Okay.
that's exactly what female directors, or a woman in probably a government job, if you don't give her a certain quota, it's not going to happen. That's because we are a very patriarchal society. There's misogyny in each of us, in me, you, everyone. It's like so deeply seated there that we can't even recognize it.
Yeah.
So I feel that till you don't give that, a union rule coming tomorrow, that okay, 40% of every production house has to be, 40% of their films have to be directed by women, it's not going to change. We are going to be like la di la, put it on social media, oh, women empowerment, and look, 10 films are being directed by women. But if 10 out of 900 films are being directed by women, it's a huge problem. We are 50% of the population.
Yeah.
So, and that's why there are no female stories. And that's why even when women get to direct, they try to tell male stories, because nobody wants to hear, nobody wants to see
Woman-centric story.
nobody wants to see, it becomes a women-centric story. So,
Chick flick.
yeah, chick flick, like she's a person. Why does it have to get
Yeah.
labeled like, you won't believe when I was going to US for my film, for Bebaak's premiere, I was taking a flight via Dubai, and this so from Dubai to US, there's a separate terminal because your hand luggage gets checked again, right? And the guy who was checking my luggage, he was like, "Oh, you're going to US," and he realized I'm a Muslim, and he was talking to me, chit chatting, and he asked me that, "Oh, what are you going for?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going for the first time. My film has got selected." So he got super excited knowing I'm a woman who made a film. And then he said in Urdu, he said that, "Oh, you must have made a film on a woman, right?" So it like that whole stereotyping. He was
Yeah.
right, but that stereotyping felt so annoying because I'm a woman, so I can only tell women's stories. Because men don't tell female stories, and they really suck at it when they do.
Men tell only men's stories and they don't get labeled for that.
Exactly. That's why I feel that women, when they get their chance in the mainstream world, they should tell. I mean, I love Gully Boy, but I would love to see a Gully Girl, right? That's a.
Yeah.
You want your film to make 100 crores, great. But if you're not going to change the society, what's the point? I mean, I love Zoya Akhtar as a director. This is not an attack on her,
Yeah.
but it's just a random example that came to my head. That, there has to be female protagonist films that have to get that 100 crore, and it's unfortunate that the money equation says that, but it's a business of filmmaking. It's not a painting. It's not an art that you can look at and feel happy. I mean, all those creative satisfaction is a completely different conversation. But 100 crore means that many people have gone. And so in Korea, when they talk about the success of a film, they talk about how many people have seen it.
Okay.
So 3 million people seen it, 4 million. They never talk about the money, which I think is a great way to save this whole conversation about money, and it not being about money but the number of people that have watched it. So I think we need to start doing that. Maybe we are a larger country, more population, it's not possible, but it feels more respectful for a film that, 10 million people saw my film. That's far more respectful than, oh, it won 100 crores.
Yeah.
So I mean, if we calculated in people, I would love to be in that race of, like, I want 1 billion people to see my film, but that 100 crore just makes the whole art of filmmaking so cheap.
Yeah. It reduces it to
Value, yeah.
Yeah. I think, in fact, somewhere I read, when you were talking about how even women are sometimes pressured to tell, male-centric stories to get more audience. I
Absolutely.
think I read somewhere that J.K. Rowling, someone had asked her, did she think about making Harry Potter a girl character instead? And she said, I thought of it, but then I thought a boy would appeal more. So that, which is kind of sad.
That comes from reality. I don't know why, but it's how it is.
Yeah. So I hope I gave you the correct information. I think that's what I read. Anyways.
Yeah, I have 3 scripts ready, but out of that, in 2 of the scripts, the protagonist is a woman. Because even if that's a deliberate effort, I think, like, if I don't say, who will? And I think every director should think that, irrespective of their gender, because female stories need to be told.
Yeah.
It's not that men are not important. This is not a male bashing idea. It's, of course, male stories need to be, all of us need to tell our stories. And since that, we need that balance in the society, in art, in films. And I think we really lack female stories. And that's far more concerning than who's saying that. But till we don't have a lot of female directors, um, because some of the films that I see, when there is a female protagonist, the film is made by a man. It just feels like the writer director has never met a woman, because it's such a male understanding of what a woman is like. It feels like, dude, you must have had like mother, sister, somebody, friends. How can you not know that how women are like?
Yeah.
Uh, it's not so difficult for me to understand how men are. Like, there has to be an empathy, certain amount of empathy, right, to understand the kind of loneliness they feel is different from us, the kind of struggle with anger, with not being able, because they are told that, boys should not cry, the struggle with that. It's not difficult to understand someone else because your gender is different. But I don't know why male directors struggle with that.
It's true. So, what are you working on? What's your current projects?
Well, I can't really talk about it, but I'm working on a couple of films.
Okay. In fact, I tried looking up Blood Circle and I couldn't find where it was, streamed, or is it out, or
No. It's just at the script level, and it was selected in that LA lab last year where I went, and I can tell you what the theme of the film is. I won't be able to say anything else.
Sure.
As a filmmaker, what really fascinates me, why I was talking also about Korean films, because the idea of regular people becoming violent really fascinates me a lot. I mean, everyone takes up violence at one point. No one was probably exposed to that as a child, or even if they are exposed to, what makes a human violent or resort to violence? That really fascinates me. So
Okay.
basically, Blood Circle is about three different characters: regular people, middle class, with their everyday lives. What pushes them to the boundary where they think, where they end up harming someone else through their violent act. So it's about that circle. That's why it's called Blood Circle, because it's about a circle that we all are stuck in, where we try to pass our pain to someone else, our trauma to someone else, to help ourselves heal. Well, that's the theme of the film. So
Okay. So when are you looking to bring it out?
I'm actually working on two other films, and I'm hoping one of them gets financed soon. And yeah,
Great. All the best for it and for your future projects, Shazia.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Yes, same here.
You can check out Bebaak streaming on Mubi and ping me at Maharani Talks on Instagram. Take care.